Hello, Allison McMurter. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am great. I'm great. So I wanted to jump on this quick Zoom call with you because we obviously know that there's been a lot of buzz in the news. There's been a handful of organized crime groups that have been fraudulently selling people's homes, without the homeowner's knowledge.
Correct.
And essentially the thieves are really just impersonating the homeowner using fraudulent documents, stealing the title, where they can essentially resell the home or also remortgage it. So I guess the question is, how does somebody protect themselves against this? Because I think there's been about 30 or 40 within the last month or so, correct?
I don't know the stats on what's been going on. I mean, we've known about it for so long because it directly impacts what we do and what steps we take. So it's always on our minds, but I know it's been out in the public a bit more than usual, which I think is good because it is a real risk and a real threat.
Yeah.
And people should be aware of it. And, there's certain people that are more susceptible to it, that are more appealing to fraudsters for various reasons. So especially if you fall into that category, it's extra important that you know what's going on and what steps you can take to try and protect yourself from it.
Right.
Um, like a lot of crime, there's not necessarily a safeguard that is going to make sure that this never ever happens because criminals are very good at what they do, and even with the best of intentions and the best things in place, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to happen. So the best we can do is say, okay, if it does happen, then are they as protected as possible from any negative consequences? So in Ontario, there's been a lot of case law. And within, the last 15 or so years, there has been updates to various pieces of legislation that deal directly with this. And one of the biggest sort of players in this whole situation is title insurance. So title insurance, most people that bought within the last while will have it automatically as part of their transaction. If you've owned your home for, 15, 20 or more years, it would be worth looking into. No matter what, you should verify that you have a policy and that you have the information for the policy. It should have been sent to you as part of your closing package if it was
Okay.
purchased at the time.
So before we dive into that, how does it happen though? Is it door knocking? Is it somebody calling the homeowner? Because they've got to get their ID, correct? They got to get the driver's license and what other documents they need to get from them.
Most of the time, they are just really good fraudsters and they have the ability to make fake identification. So,
Okay.
because a lot of the records relating to houses it's a necessity that they're public to an extent. Anyone can look up title to any home for, $33 at Service Ontario, and find out who owns it and their dates of birth. So there you've already got some critical pieces of information. And now too, with social media and that, a lot of the times it's not too hard to find out sort of what they look like. And the very organized fraudsters are bringing in, third parties who are colluding with them. I'll pay you X amount of dollars to pretend to be this guy because you kind of look like him. Or they're just doing an ID with the name and birthday that looks nothing like them. But how is the lawyer or the bank going to know? So there's a few different versions of it, but a lot of the time they, from what we've heard and what we've been told, they've never met the homeowner. They have no connection to the homeowner. The homeowner didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't a mistake that they made. It was just for whatever reason they were targeted, and usually because they're an easier target. People that they look for, from what we've been told by the title insurance companies who spend a lot of time and money researching and tracking this, is that they really obviously favor houses with no financing, so owned free and clear, and also homeowners with good credit scores, because those are the most appealing for things like mortgage fraud.
Got it. Okay. So title insurance is obviously one way that the homeowner can protect themselves. And I know FCT is one, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, and I can't remember what that stands for. And there's a few other ones. Can we kind of go through the different ones that are out there?
Yeah, so FCT is First Canadian Title, and
That's
they
it.
have been providing title insurance for a long time in Ontario. There's also Stewart Title, which is another company, also, own a lot of the market share as well. Chicago Title is also a company that sells in Ontario. And then there is another that I believe is through Law Pro, which is having to do with the lawyers' insurance company. So they have a version of title insurance that they sell as well.
Right.
So those are sort of the four main providers in Ontario. When it comes to residential policies, they obviously are all in direct competition with each other. So there is a lot of similarities in the products that they offer. It's always good, you know, if there's something unique or quirky about the property or you or anything like that, it's good to describe it to your lawyer because, you know, perhaps there is, you know, some rider or some exemption or endorsement or something that might apply with some but not the others. But, you know, policy from any one of them is going to be what you're looking for.
So when I'm now closing on my property and I'm sitting down with you and I got the papers in front of me and I'm choking up because I got to give you so much money for this down payment. Do I get to select which title insurance I want to go with? How does that process work? Because I mean, I know I have title insurance, but yeah.
So there's some offices that just deal with one title insurer. There's some that deal with many title insurers. We deal with several of them. Usually people aren't we do of course say, you know, we're in the process of ordering title insurance from this company. Do you have any, you know, questions or concerns? We'll often have them sign some acknowledgements from that company about what title insurance is doing and covering. So it is all discussed. If someone comes to us and says, hey, I had title insurance from, you know, company A, I really liked them. I actually had to do a claim and they were fantastic. I really want company A. Absolutely. We'll get you company A. But most of people don't seem to have a strong preference. When it gets into things like commercial properties, sometimes private lending, there can be a difference in terms of what is offered, what protections, what costs, all of that sort of thing. So sometimes like on our end, there might be a bit more shopping on those types of deals. But because they're in such close competition, there's only a few of them. For the residential policies, they're usually quite competitive. There is some times where, you know, someone will come out with something brand new and the others take a little while to catch up. So maybe you might, you know, focus on the brand new one for a little bit. But, you know, I don't think for my own policy, I really had that strong of a preference.
And how much does it cost?
It scales based on when you're purchasing based on the purchase price, when you're mortgaging based on the registered amount of the mortgage. So, you know, at probably the least expensive policies have to do with condominiums. So you could potentially get, you know, an owner title insurance policy for a condominium, maybe in the range of, you know, 300 and up from there. And then, you know, when you're going into freehold homes with a higher price point, you know, it's not unusual to see 800 to 1,000. So they really do vary. Using the purchase price, you can use, or the mortgage registered amount, you can usually get a quote. So it is something you can check in advance. But, you know, if you have the details of your deal and you call a lawyer's office, they'd probably be able to guesstimate it pretty well for you.
Okay, but I mean, really, at the end of the day, this is a very small expense for what it can save you in the long run if
it's
you
a one-time fee as well.
Yeah.
So even if you own the home for 30 years, that same policy is going to cover you that entire time. Lenders, if you're switching out your lenders, like you're refinancing with someone new, or even staying with the same lender, but they're discharging the mortgage and registering a new one, you'll have to buy your lender a new policy. But lender policies are less expensive. They're usually probably around the range of like 175,000 sometimes, I think is a good range.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't close without it myself.
Now, we've talked about the homeowner protecting themselves now, right? What about the buyer? So this fraudulent transaction takes place, the seller is protected, but what about the buyer?
Yeah, so I mean, the buyer also needs title insurance, to be quite honest. So when you're purchasing, that is usually when you would acquire it. Ontario, now we don't do litigation law, so I'm definitely not the expert in all of the recent court decisions, that sort of thing. But they have sort of a system where it's talking about deferred indefeasibility is the technical term for it, but they're looking at who can we consider an innocent party in the transaction. So for instance, is the person who dealt directly with the fraudster an innocent party, or is the only innocent party the next purchaser? So it's sort of trying to parse through who the province would consider to be the real owner. So if a property is sold via fraud, you know, who gets title back, the original owner or the purchaser who had no idea about the fraud? And so there's a lot of case law out there looking at how that would work. But the main thing is the title insurance. So if, for instance, the court, it all goes to court and you are the purchaser and the original owner gets title back, then obviously you have lost a lot in a fraudulent transaction. So you would be looking to your title insurer to make you whole. Now, they can't necessarily, if the court has awarded title back to the original owner, you know, they can't necessarily make you whole in the sense that they're going to get you the house. But, you know, how much money have you lost at the end of the day? What was your, you know, down payments or mortgage payments? How much is it going to cost you to get into a new similar home, you know, 3 years later, 1 year later, 6 months later, or whatever it is.
Right.
So title insurance is looking to sort of fill the gap. So if there's no title insurance, there is what's called a fund of last resort, which is the land title assurance fund. But you have to pay all your own legal fees. Title insurance has, you know, somewhat of a duty to defend, and a duty to defend title generally. So they do cover a lot of legal costs potentially. It's all circumstantial on the situation. But if with no title insurance, if you lose big on a fraudulent transaction, either it was sold from you and you don't get it back, or you bought it but you don't end up with it because of, you know, that, you can, if you're uninsured, make a claim to the land title insurance fund. But again, you have to front all the legal costs and you're not sure what you're going to get at the end of the day.
Got it. So then now if I'm a homeowner and I'm buying another home, I'm protected because I have title insurance because I own my current home, correct?
No, you buy a new policy for your second home. So the policy stays with the house as long as you own it.
Right. But I haven't signed the papers yet, correct? Like I'm purchasing that property. It's closing 2 months down the road. So you're saying on the close, that's when I've got it. So now we're both protected. Got it. Okay. That makes sense. And then is it mandatory? Like, do you have to get it?
So there's two options. So a lawyer who is helping you, you know, trade in the real estate at the end of the day, like change the title, they have to do one of two things to guarantee title to the best of their ability based on what's available. So before title insurance, the process was often called lawyer's opinion on title. And that would involve writing to a bunch of various people that are allowed to hold what's called off-title interests. So for instance, we can look at a title search and see everything that's registered. So we know about all of that. And we can tell you about all of that. But if there's property taxes that are owed, there can be a lot of property taxes owing before they bother to place a lien. It doesn't mean they're not owing and they're not going to follow the house. So pre-title insurance, we would write to the tax department before every purchase and say, are there back taxes? And then they would do a report back to us for a fee and say yes or no. Same thing with the building department. Water is another one that can affect title going forward to new owners. So it was basically that due diligence was done in place of title insurance. So each one of those searches, they're called off-title searches, do incur a cost to the homeowner because it's a disbursement. So oftentimes for most people buying, the cost of title insurance is similar or less than searches, depending what municipality you're in, because some are much more expensive than others. So when we're looking at, should you request we recommend title insurance, every lawyer I know does. If someone says to me, I really don't want it, I want you to do solicitor opinion on title instead, as long as we have time to get the reports, we can help you with that. There's usually a lead time of, 3 weeks or so. But you would pay for all the reports. And for instance, reports like, the building department or the fire department, they're going to say, to the best of our knowledge and belief, there's no issue with the property, but we don't guarantee the statement. So it's not, the same coverage you're going to get going forward with title insurance. And also it doesn't insure you against title fraud in the future. None of the reports we can get can protect you or help you at all if that would happen, years from now.
Now, I don't recall if we talked about this part yet, but can you get it after the fact? So I buy the home, let's say I bought it 40 years ago.
Yep.
Can I? Yeah. Okay.
Yep, you can get title insurance anytime. There's just some information that they need.
Mhm.
And then they can use that to sort of process the order.
Got it. Now I just come back into the lawyer's office and get that done, or do I call FCT or do I call Stewart Title? Like, how does that
Yeah,
work?
I mean, we have done it for clients. You know, sometimes they're buying a cottage and we're telling them about title insurance and they'll say, oh, you know what? I don't remember having that on my home I bought 30 years ago. Should I get it? And we'll tell them, well, it's up to you, but you know, here's why you might want it.
Right.
And we can order it for them, you know, when we're instructed to do so. I don't know if you, oh, sorry. I don't know if you can buy directly from them or not. I haven't obviously tried.
Right.
But you can always give them a call and they'll tell you.
um, what about registering like a lien on the property? Like, say if I got like a home equity line of credit or register something, would that help to protect me as well too? Or are there other things that we can do to protect
From
ourselves?
what we've been told from the title insurance companies, their data shows that houses with a registered charge are less likely to be targeted for mortgage fraud or title fraud. So there are people that will just get a line of credit to have something registered on title. They don't even use it. Obviously, it incurs a cost to get it registered, and then also you have to pay a cost to get it removed when you sell the house. So it's almost like another insurance. Are you happy paying the cost, or you know, do you want to take the risk? So we definitely have had clients, you know, have their houses fully paid off and decide to get a line of credit for that reason.
Yeah. And you know what? Here is some great advice. So if you have a property and you don't have a home equity line of credit, get a home equity line of credit on there. Give us a call and we'll help you go buy an investment property. Right. So at least that's my advice. All right. But
Yeah.
in the look, it's a good way to protect yourself. It's just an added layer. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's
Anything
great.
you can do, you know, that doesn't hurt you in any other way and also makes your home less appealing to fraudsters, you know, is probably a good thing.
For sure. So listen, Allison, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that that we need to talk about or share with anybody that's listening in regards to protecting themselves with obviously fraudsters getting a lot more sophisticated in this new digital world that we live in?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want it to be something that people are, you know, worrying about actively all the time or anything like that. I think, you know, if you take the steps, you have title insurance, if you're comfortable and you'd like to, you have some sort of charge registered on title, you're careful with your personal information and your digital information, that's all you can do. So there's no need to, you know, worry about it nightly or anything like that. Just take the right steps to protect yourself, and then sort of, you know, move on from there. But luckily, most of us will never have to deal with this. And for the few who unfortunately do, hopefully you have, you know, an insurer who can help guide you through the process.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point as well too. I mean, with all the millions of homes that are out there, I mean, there's what I've heard, I think it's about 30 that happened recently, which is a very small number. Obviously, unfortunate to the people that have been exposed to this and have been, you know, fraudulently taken advantage of. But yes, title insurance is a way to do it. Putting a home equity line of credit, registering something on title is another way to protect yourself.
And I should
Look,
mention too,
yeah.
because I'm sort of familiar with your group, I think another protection you can possibly enact for rental properties specifically is to make sure that you're doing a very close vetting of tenants, because there has been some fraud where there was sort of a fake tenant involved. So they were able to, you know, show the house for sale because they had their guy on the inside who was the tenant. So, you know, making sure the tenants are who they say they are and getting, you know, a lot of verification is probably good practice as well.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So Allison, listen, thank you very much for your time
No
and of
problem.
course your knowledge and expertise. And listen, you know, the way things do evolve, and I think this is something that's happening throughout time, is that, you know, the fraudsters get better and then eventually we're able to catch up and plug some of these holes up, which I think is happening right now. So thanks again, Allison. I
No
appreciate it.
problem.
All
All
right.
right. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll talk soon.
Yes. All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.